Okay, I'd like to call to order the special city council meeting for Tuesday, November 19th, 2024 at 6 p.m. This evening, we will be missing our sitting mayor, John Ryan. He's out with an illness, so I'll be stepping in his stead as mayor pro tem. And with that, I will turn it over to Jenny Max in regards to the master plan, downtown master plan update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, City Council. Tonight, we are hoping to be able to walk through with the council the various components of the master plan process and receive feedback from the council as a group as far as if there are items you'd like to adjust or continue on the same path forward. And between staff and WIDSETH, we'll be able to answer your questions and hopefully provide some direction. So what I can do is walk through the information that was provided in the packet. Just we'll stop at each section and get some feedback and kind of go from there. So really, Mr. Chair, it's kind of your discretion as far as process and sequence and how you'd like to see that play out.
Appreciate that. I would like to try to get through the information and have the council present any questions before we turn it over to public comment. Try to make sure there's enough time to be able to get everybody's opinions on the matter, and then we can go through the process thoroughly from there. I think we should have enough time.
I should be able to. Oh, yes, just like this. Oh, no, it's fine. Thank you. Sorry for that. So, in the agenda packet that you were provided, we have 4 primary sections as it relates to the master plan. So the first one is project scope and schedule status. The second is the focus committee, so the downtown master plan committee. Third is communication, and fourth is roles. What we're looking for from the council is direction for each of these components through either affirmation of what was indicated in the request for proposals as it is stated, or if you have some adjustment to the scope from the RFP or anything in between, that's what we're looking to get feedback and direction from the council on for each item. So to start off with the project scope, so the components that were called for in the request for proposals is shown on the screen there. As you can see, there were a couple of items that were reduced based on that adjustment in overall cost when the council set that maximum cost for the study at the 120,000. WIDSETH's proposals were modified for the business and economic development section, so that was greatly reduced to reduce the scope cost, and then the funding mechanisms section as well. So what we were left with was infrastructure assessment and solutions, placemaking, parking access and walkability, streetscape infrastructure, and activation. We can certainly speak to some of those specifics that have been addressed so far, or just the approach that we've been, that WIDSETH has taken with some of the committee meetings. But I will just pause for a moment and see if you have questions on either specific components or feedback on inclusion or a modification in any way.
This may be way ahead of the ball game. What I'd like to do is go back to like an original phase, or what we were looking at is for taking care of certain things first. What I'd like to see is we take care of, I know this is way out of, I would like to see us take care of City Hall Street, Church Street, Lakers Lane, the issues we have at Pocket Park, and the possibility of a sidewalk, which has been discussed for a few years by the historical village. Take care of those first. Also, some of the power issues we have. I think, is Tom here tonight? I think I may be way out of line, but I think he's had discussions with Minnesota Power on what we can, what we can't, or maybe possibly what can be done. But I think we should start with that, and then from there, then go beyond that.
So Councilman Fraley, mostly looking to prioritize certain areas.
Yes.
Of the I'm going to say the broader downtown, and focus on those sections first.
Correct.
And take this look at these components within those sections.
Correct.
So then leaving for a future date more of the Main Street.
Correct.
Corridor? Okay, I'm just making sure so it's a different approach, and certainly that could be a way to look at
Because originally, I
focusing
think
the
that's
efforts.
right. That's where I want to start and look at. And then we can have later discussions on the other things, I think, to expand from that, if or not.
Question, the project scope. Do you have it available, the letter from the staff that listed off the focuses that this was originally set up for? You shared it that day on that slide with all the business owners in here a month ago. It was that screen I asked you to put up before.
I do, and I can pull that up. It would just take me a minute. I guess the response I would say though is that the RFP did come subsequent to that. So that was ultimately that is the guiding document that the council approved, that which drove the next steps that have happened. So I can.
Sure, I just want to see the two side by side so we know what got covered, what didn't get covered with that original document.
I would say generally, as we discussed at that meeting as well, that this project scope really expanded from the placemaking with respect to placemaking and probably activation specifically. I think some of the, and maybe streetscape. So the other memo was more based on infrastructure related and things like that, but I can find that here. Here. All right. So this was the presentation that I presented at the listening session. Are you clicking too? We're both clicking. Right here. Oh,
Yeah, so back.
that one.
So in that letter there, it was identified road placement, function, pedestrian route, safety, utilities, stormwater, lighting, commercial expansion, parade routes, ADA, and mixed uses. And this was the original letter that was put together, from Tom and Bethany when all this discussion started, as those were the items to address with this plan. And from there, I guess, with that, I don't necessarily see much as far as streetscaping, other, from that, I guess I don't see how we got to where we are with your other screen. I guess, I don't see the overlay of the two lining up.
I believe that was certainly an additional component that was presented to the council that Bethany had put together with that RFP. So certainly that could be something if you want to scale back, that is an option. And
Right.
this would be the
And that
time
was,
to-
that was addressed, but I think, I think what Joe and I are on is let's take care of these things first before we go to anything else.
Right, that it goes back to this is what the focus of putting this plan together was for. So, just to back up a little bit, last time, different council up here, but last time Main Street was tore up and put in, the council didn't do what should have been done. They should have put some stormwater in, they should have addressed some of these issues back then. It's just costing us more money now. That was talked about at the time, it was voted down. That's public knowledge, it's in the record, it's for everyone to look up, you know. Tom can speak to any of this too at any time. And so the plan is, as this council, as we move forward and whatever street gets tore up next, let's not skip something this time. Let's put this infrastructure in, you know, downtown utilities, 4th of July. Sean's here too, and he can testify to this with the power pole catches fire because it's overloaded in front of Rafferty's Pizza, 4th of July. Downtown, how many business owners has lost power downtown 4th of July, right? The infrastructure in town needs updated. There's not, you know, I'm not the power expert, but that's been a common problem that I have heard from a lot of business owners and witnessed during these heavy times, some sort of major power failure in downtown. That's something Tom's been working with the utilities and Minnesota Power. That would be a big component on how we get that up and going. The stormwater, like I say, everyone knows Pocket Park rains hard, it washes out Pocket Park going down in there, the curb, the gutters. Back when Bethany was doing this, you know, we're not compliant with a runoff with the state of Minnesota being this close to the lake. We all found that out in Bethany's kind of update of the planning and zoning plan. And so all of those things, I still think are a focus of this council, and we want to know what other issues there are from other businesses. And I would, you know, kind of sum it up with, you know, that's the goal. If I'm hearing and understanding the business owners and the people in downtown and from the staff, you know, this is from the staff and I think where we want this to go. And so I guess that would be my thought and direction on it, you know. Obviously, when the business owner showed up here the other day, they didn't show up all too because they were all happy with the plan that got put out. Here, you can take one and pass it down, but so we know where it was coming from. This is you have a copy of it. This is the plan, you know, that was showing throughout town, you know, the different versions. And from these plans that were put together, you know, this doesn't represent, in my opinion, any of that. And so that's what you know, I don't know if any of you have actually seen this plan, but that's, you know, what started all this in the meeting before. But, you know, what is being done here in the process, we do not want to continue with the same process as you stated, Jenny, you know, just a minute ago. Do we want to continue with the same process? No. I think before we go down another road like this with a project involving downtown and the business owners, the process at the city level is a big issue and what needs to change. You know, we need input from all the people sitting in the chairs out there, you know, before, you know, maybe before this project scope is even put together. And I think that's where it went wrong at first is, you know, before we put together the scope and go, here, this is what we're going to do from the town. Why don't we listen to the town and get some input on what we should do or how we should do it? And so I would say even before this, we got to back up 3 more steps in the city and change our process, how we approach something like this. Now, that all being said, we still need to address these issues, right? The ones I brought up, the power, the runoff, you know, maybe the intersection down there, all that stuff. It's just, how do we go about doing that? And I don't know that, you know, going through, you know, a scope that's already put together like this is the actual starting point. I think there needs to be a process put in place, you know. I'm jumping a little ahead, but you know, one of the things is with the communication, it's line item 3, and you can talk to that, Jenny, about the different communication, but I think that's where, you know, we need to start there with item number 3 and move number 3 to the top. And so the project scope and status is that we'd have the communication as number 1. And does everyone out there have a copy of this? Know what I'm talking about? Is it on the table back there?
A copy of the packet is out in front. This is online.
This is online
Yep.
too? Okay. So, yeah. So here, just with the overview, the project updates and the agenda, just, as we move ahead through this conversation tonight, I'd say number 3 would become number 1. And number F would become number A, on the communication, and start with the chamber, go out to the businesses, and therefore, kind of redo the whole thing. So what I would say is we want to put a pause on moving ahead at all with the project and figure out a different internal and external process with dealing with the business owners of Nisswa before we move ahead even any farther to talk about, the project update, the scope, the schedule, it's a lot of money. I don't know. Do we know how much money's been spent to date?
I don't know offhand, no.
Would it be safe to say it's about a fifth, a fourth, quarter? Do we have any idea? Dave? Yeah. Okay. Well, whatever it is, we want to look and evaluate that. But before we move ahead, and it's nothing against WSN, because nobody wants to do drawings or plans 4 times at all. It's just, we got the cart way before the horse on this one. And, so now before we go one step farther forward, we gotta stop and redo the whole process. So that'd be my input on all this stuff.
I agree with what Joe's got there. All these people in the audience tonight here, these business owners, and that they've got a lot at stake here. And I think it's time to maybe put the brakes on this thing until we know more and, get their input. It affects them a great deal. And I think it's important to, consider them and their needs and interests before we move forward with this.
When we had the meeting 2 weeks ago, 3
Probably
weeks,
a month ago,
month.
wasn't it?
time flies. I think probably the greatest takeaway that we all had from that, those that were able to attend as council members, was there's confusion, frustration, wanting to be able to have a greater understanding of what the intent and purposes of this, and thus the scope of any project. It has to have fundamental roots for this particular space in downtown Nisswa is gonna come from the chamber, its associated members, to be able to get their input as to what problems 1 through 3 or 1 through 10 that they're running into. So Joe, I do agree with you on that, on the premise of slowing down to be able to try to perhaps form a larger committee that's gonna be more conclusive of more business owners. I think when we spoke about it at that meeting, perhaps a more favorable approach would be to ask Callie in the chamber, the Nisswa chamber, to get a poll or a survey from all the business owners within the city of Nisswa to come up with not only who's going to be on the committee, but what is the committee? What is the body of it? Is it 6, 8, 10, or an odd number, to be able to get us the input that you all collectively have? Because the city's going to be able to come up with their proposed solutions. WSN is going to come up with any concept such as what you all saw based on hypotheticals. But if they have a more refined scope of what are some desires on the business end, the private business end, coinciding with the city's end, I think we should be able to get a little bit more of a smoother timeline and process once we have those pieces put together. Not just to try to get it back on track, but just to do it the right way. And when we all met last time, I think the message was not put the foot on the gas or the brake, pull the e-brake, to be able to realign and have a better vision of what this is going to look like. So, rest of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and so I guess, with that, back to that other page, kind of with what Mark was saying too, the infrastructure needs, I don't know if we want to open it up to the public, but, I guess, that would be what I would view the goal would be, because,
Yeah, we should
Tom.
take care of that first, Joe.
and maybe Tom can speak to this too, but, Tom running the public works and planning the streets out with WSN and stuff, you know, he's really looking for, a guide as we go ahead in the future, as he does the road bonding and the projects. Hey, when we tear up City Hall Street or Main Street next time, what are the 4 other components that need to go in with that? And so we do need to put together this plan on the front end, so Tom has a reference to work off of and go ahead. Now, the other thing that I do have to ask is, you know, since that meeting, does anybody here know? I actually reached out to some past council members and stuff, or WSN, but I was told in somewhere between 2010 to 2012, this was already done in the city. Does anybody have any information or can find that information? But both sitting council people that I reached out to at that time, and also chamber people and other business people also verified that this was done back then, but nobody seems to have a record of that. And I'm wondering who or how, or that wasn't that many years ago. How can we come up with that information also as a starting point?
To answer the question, I have been digging into files for that. I have not found any specific report to that effect, because it sounds like there was conversation or there was something put together at some point. I have not been able personally to locate that. But it's also worthy of a conversation of asking even 10 years later to revisit some of the issues as well. So we may be here at this point, and it may be worth asking the questions, but yes, I've been trying to locate it. No, I have not found anything.
Sure. And Tom, when was Main Street redone? Because this was all talked about and the curb and gutter was planned at that time. It was just voted down not to do it.
So
correct?
storm sewer too.
The storm sewer stuff, right?
So all that storm sewer planning that was done before I ever started,
But even before you started.
Yeah,
So it's been in
so-
place a long time.
probably 20 years or more.
Okay.
So some of that's probably outdated now, but, this plan that you're thinking about or referencing, I'm guessing it's probably the comp plan. They've done the comp plan a couple of times,
Right, I think it was in with the comp plan, but I haven't seen it though.
but I'm pretty sure we've never done a specific downtown master plan, at least not that I'm aware.
Yeah, and the council members from back at that time that I asked, they said it was a master plan for the whole city. So it,
Yeah, that would be
Down-
the comp plan.
Comp,
yeah, and that there are elements of all of this stuff in that plan back then.
There are, but they're nowhere near as detailed as what this was gonna be.
Tom, while you're there, have you been in discussions with Minnesota Power? What can be done downtown?
So very high level. Really all I was looking for is a ballpark estimate, you know, are we looking at a 5-figure, 6-figure, 7-figure cost to bury power? And it sounds like it would be a high 6-figure or low 7-figure to have underground power throughout the downtown. It really, so there would be different components of that would have to be reviewed if you wanted to pursue it further. All I was trying to get at with Minnesota Power is, and to give you guys some kind of an idea, if we're talking high 6 figures, low 7,
Mhm.
do you want to go any further? Because the next step further is engineering and things that cost money. This was, you know, just high level basic knowledge.
Jesse might know this too, but is there any way to add or boost transformers
Of course.
for the power? So, because I know Minnesota Power, I mean, when they start looking at burying lines, it's very, very expensive. I know
So-
Otter Tail does it up north.
There's
Okay.
their component, but then the other thing that happens is all the individual services.
That's right.
Right,
And the individual services have to be engineered by an independent engineering firm and built by an individual or a private contracting firm.
And it's probably gonna be a new panel.
What's that?
It'll probably end up having to be a new panel on
Right.
many of the individual businesses just to get it to
Yeah.
code.
There was a lot to it. There was some where we were gonna have to run conduit under the street because of
Without a
where
doubt.
they're served. There was things like some of the restaurants, the way they get their 3-phase power would have to be updated, so it was gonna be, it'll be expensive if you go there.
no matter which way we go, it's gonna be expensive.
Very.
But I guess this is just one of my points. This should be one of the points that maybe should go out on a survey to the business owners, to get feedback, from people and so we know, cause it's just one thing that I've witnessed, one thing that I've heard, and kind of start that process doing that because like you say, do we want to explore it any farther? I don't know. The people out there in the seats need to kind of say, yeah, we need to explore it farther, or we don't.
This is kind of my second go around with this kind of a question. I've also had this question come up when I worked for City of Avon, and that's been 25 years ago. And they wanted to bury the power really bad, just as bad as we do here. But when they analyzed it, it just wasn't worth it. And I think maybe there should be some upgrades to how the power comes into town. I don't know what they should be exactly. I think that take a little deeper conversation, but if you want to have it buried, it's never gonna get any cheaper, I guess, that, I'll say that, but still, I don't know if it's worth it. One thing the power company will always tell you is if it's up in the air, it's easier for them to fix it and get it back on if there's a problem, but.
Depends on the power company.
Kinda does.
Yeah. I guess the other thing, for everyone sitting out there is just when was it, August, September? WSN completed the ADA study. So there is a complete study now done for the town on all the different areas, for the handicap, the sidewalks, what that should all be brought up to speed on. And that is something that would be part of this plan,
Yes.
so that all of out in front of a lot of your businesses, there may be issues, but also too, I think that brings up another item or component too. Maybe Tom, you can speak to that, and surely the people in the audience, but I don't believe that the city actually owns all the sidewalks in front of all the businesses. And before we take that step, maybe we need to do some survey work, communication with businesses, who's going to take over the responsibility of all the sidewalks, how just that one component is gonna work, but
Well, the biggest thing that'll drive the sidewalks, is the drainage.
right,
So curb and gutter is the drainage and it's in the sidewalk. So when and if you ever get around to doing a drainage plan, you're gonna wanna have clear ownership of the sidewalk because that's where your drainage system is.
Yeah.
I don't think individual business owners are gonna wanna take on the cost of putting in that infrastructure. The city probably will. But in order to do that, we would have to, do something with to have clear ownership or who's owning it or what the responsibilities are gonna be for those sidewalks going forward.
right. And even like plotting all the city streets correctly, also, I think that'd be another thing that we'd start with. For instance, City Hall Street out here, that's not plotted correctly, there's a owner in the back that him and I own some property adjacent to this, and we own both City Hall Road and Church Street for this whole intersection, the two of us, at the time when we found that out. And to my knowledge, none of this has been plotted correctly. City Hall, that none of those issues have been still fixed or corrected at a high level to even come in and put in infrastructure, sidewalks and all that. And that would, even before we do that plan, that would be a starting point for WSN to start looking at is, where do all these roads go? How are they all plotted, things like that.
One thing to note too, if we go in and clean up the survey work, chances are it's not gonna change where the road is or where
Right.
their businesses are. It's really just addressing where the lines on the map are. It's expensive to do that, but it will be worth it. As property changes hands or future road projects come up, having that stuff cleared up is a good idea.
Right. So I would also say that would be a starting point that we'd want to start at before we jumped ahead with a bunch of this, but yeah, whoever else has more information, but those are just a few things that jump to the mind on where this should start.
Anybody have anything else? Another point I'll bring up, but that I've already mentioned, is working with the chamber, I think is gonna be critical here. Callie, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if there is a desire for a certain number or certain additional business owners to be able to have on this, it'd be great to be able to get the perspectives of all of downtown Nisswa business owners. Help us build the roadmap, right? I think you could already hear that we got a good direction of what we see. We can help kind of tandem some of those projects. Because if we rip up any surface in downtown Nisswa, what can we do with that open earth while we have it, right? And then what if there's additional objectives that downtown business owners have, it can try to kill 2, 3, 4 birds with one stone, more or less, right? Is it fair to request, looking at the packet that you have here, Jenny, in regards to the number 2 on the committee? Should the size of the committee change? If so, what's the size of the council wants to see? Well, we have current committee members that are obviously Callie with the chamber. We have 4 downtown business owners. We have 1 rep from the Parks Commission, 1 rep from the Public Works Committee. We have Steve, city planner, Parks and Rec director, Public Works directors, Jenny, city admin, and then 4 reps from WSN. Is there agreement? Maybe we can put to a motion to enable Nisswa Chamber to collaborate amongst themselves and reconvene with us at the December meeting to be able to
Mhm.
put forth whatever they've determined internally amongst your collective members for what that committee could look like. If you have names at that point in time too, then bring them forth, and then that can help us take that next step. And then on the back end, we can still work to be able to try to have our side shored up too, so we can try to hit what that project scope is gonna be in December going into January for 2025. That makes sense?
Mhm.
Sounds good. Yeah, because bottom line, it's a big dollar amount for this study. This town, has a history of doing a lot of studies that just don't amount to anything. I mean, I've been here a long time and, you know, at the end of the day, if we're gonna put this kind of money into something, we gotta make sure that it's a tangible plan that as Tom goes forward, that we are gonna look at, you know. If we can't even find information from 10, 12 years ago, you know, or 2012 within the city, it's like, well, how useful really was that back then?
Mhm.
You know, if this is a document that was laid out that's gonna be going on in a working document for 5 years, 10 years, and 20 years, that's gonna be built upon, we gotta make sure that we do it right, you know, at this point. So truly in 10 years, when we tear up the last street up here, we still have this in place at least to reference, look at. It'll be stuff to change, but otherwise, we're just wasting taxpayers' dollars doing another study like this. So that's the number one end goal. If we're just doing a study to do a study and we don't have that tangible outcome in there, then the whole thing's just dead in the water.
Jenny?
Thank you. I'm just going to jump in when I feel like maybe we have some consensus among the council as far as one of the steps. So with respect to the committee, it sounds like the council would like the facilitated through Callie at the chamber to bring back in December a recommendation for the number and maybe names of business owners to participate in this committee. Is that accurate?
If I may, I know you have lighting of the lights coming up. Is that adequate time frame? We meet on December 17th?
Yes.
Yes.
And I would like to, you know, as is in the packet, there's someone from the planning commission besides Stephen. I mean, somebody from that
Sure.
commission to be there so that they're on the page too. I know we have parks there. Public Works.
We don't have anyone currently.
What's that?
We don't have anyone currently.
Right,
We've been asking
right,
to see if we can get
right.
somebody.
I don't know if we want to go out to some residents to be on there too. Any feedback from the business community on that one? Some smiles, some stares, some looking down.
Well,
I was wondering if property owners were
many of this, because we want. And it's like, I had a business person tell me about this, I'm like, yeah, they talked about your property. And I'm going, really? And I'm going, well, it'd be nice if you'd be included, somebody would invite you. If there's gonna be discussions about changes. Because it's not just business owners, it's property owners. Right,
Right.
right. And I kind of felt a little left out, but what's going on? So we came up with it. I think it's communication.
Heard you loud and clear.
Yeah. Absolutely. Back to what I said, communication's gotta go to the top, you know. That's been loud and clear that, you know, yes, people have to go out and look for it, but, you know, not everybody is on the internet or the website or going, boy, I should check the city's website this day to see what I'm missing, you know, so. I think a simple thing to do though is the communication through the chamber, get it out that way, get it out postings, but yeah, that definitely needs to be addressed on how we communicate this stuff.
So with respect to residents, where does the council want to see
Well,
that?
that's a very good input there, is because some of the property owners, they may own the property, but they don't have the business there. And I think that should be some input too, possibly instead of, you know, outer residents. Right, right. And I think that would be important too, because it's affecting their property.
So
So,
if yes, how many?
yeah, I just,
It's not, I don't know that.
you don't want the committee to be so big, because then it's like herding cats.
I understand, and I'm being very specific, but I just want there to be clarity, right? I want us
Yeah,
to come out
absolutely.
of this feeling like we're on the same page.
Well,
So I
that's
have-
where one thing at a time. I think starting with the business owners, we'll have a
Right.
little bit of a better feel to be able to understand where to go from there. That's less than a month away.
Sure.
Yeah, actually
that's
is.
more than fine.
So with that, then I think in December, when we have clarity from Cali and the rest of the chamber, to be able to come forward and say, okay, perhaps now we can expand this base, understanding what the footprint is of this specific scope or this project scope. We'll be able to know then of who else that we should maybe go out to, not to handpick by any means, but to be able to make sure that there are at a minimum notices going out, that we're having discussions about this, just as we would for any nearby affected property owner if there's ever a project going on, such as, you know, Jenny, that you guys in the city staff notify to nearby affected residents, right? Just for sake of giving enough time to the entire group that's here, and thank you all for coming. I'd like to just ask Mr. Reese and WSN question quick in regards to scope that you guys have to come up with this, to be able to help maybe us and the collective group here understand what you would like to be able to make this seamless and to put these tax dollars to best use. To be able to come up with these three concepts, was this, maybe walk us through what got you to these first three concepts, and then how we can make best use of your time and all the input that we're going to be getting from the committee and the councils to move forward.
Okay, sure. First of all, just thank you for this opportunities to get this feedback from the city council and from the attendees here tonight. This is really helpful, I think, to city staff and to us to focus in on the things that are important to you and to the community in the most effective way. So the steps getting to those particular concepts began with some of the open house meetings, conceptual concepts leading toward the objectives that were described and were written in the original RFP that we responded to. Okay, going to pedestrian walkways and connectivity, all of those things.
Quick question. Open house, I mean, I'm on the council, but I don't know anything about an open house. When was that?
We have 3 open houses in our work plan that was approved by the city council. We attended an event in the city and provided information on the effort for the downtown master plan. You know, just to the general public as they were coming by. So that was one effort. There's a second and a third open house that's in the schedule going forward. We haven't had those yet. So, you know, those opportunities were part of the communication effort and in the communication plan going forward. It's good that we're taking a pause right now. If we need to change and take a few steps back to kind of re-begin that process, then that's what we should do.
Sure. So one other question with that, when was the first open
It
house?
was in August,
It
wasn't
was
it?
when?
August, I believe.
Yeah, because I was
August, but like when, just on the street or?
No, it was at the fall festival.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the open house that we're talking about was the fall festival with the, what is it, Rib Fest thing over here? We just had like a little area set up, talked to people as they came by, or if anybody saw anything or wanted to talk to us. The process that we took to get to this was, there were 2 meetings with the committee that occurred, and I don't remember the dates. I have the meeting minutes. And at those meetings, we kind of communicated what everybody kind of thought they wanted to see with the master plan, the downtown master plan. At one of the meetings, another meeting, I think we talked about it a little bit, and then we walked around, toured the downtown area and took notes as far as some of the ideas and things that people wanted. And then after those 2 meetings, which was what led up to the October 1st meeting, which was the 3rd meeting, that's when those concept plans were prepared for. Prior to that, Woodseth sat down together with our group or team, and we kind of sat down and created created those 3 concepts based on what we heard from the meetings, the 2 prior meetings, plus that open house, I guess we'll call it. And that's how these concepts were created.
And, you know, if I might add, you know, you have to start somewhere with
Right.
concepts.
Yeah.
And, you know, to describe these kinds of things just in verbal communication with a group of people, everyone has their own, you know, vision of what that means.
Dave, you're
It's-
preaching to the choir. I've been telling my wife that when we've been designing our new house.
Okay.
It's, we gotta
So,
start somewhere.
Great example.
But it's these though, I think that caught a lot of the people at the committee off guard, which is,
Well, that was our goal, to get a reaction.
Sure.
We got a reaction.
But I
Okay.
think this is good because that helps explain the communication. Obviously, it didn't get these people involved, you know, and then also it helps explain some of this that, you know, at the Rib Fest, maybe a couple of these ideas were presented by drunk people.
We were gone before that happened.
But yeah, you know, kind of know what the target audience is, you know, and how to do that. I think that's crucial for you all to know that this is actually the group, you know, to get in front of and talk to, and just as we move ahead, because that would, once again, I think all this just goes back to communication and how you guys do that and set up the open house and whatever, and maybe, you know, direct communication with Callie on, hey, 80% of the business owners are gonna be at this business. Do they still have the business night thing where you go around and not currently, but an activity like that would be another activity that would get a lot of feedback from you guys. So I just, you know, not that anything wrong with the Rib Fest, is just probably the wrong target audience there at the time.
Yeah.
So,
whether it was the right thing or wrong thing to do, we did put some concept drawings together, and, you know, the idea of that was, let's get some high-level strategic thinking going about,
Right.
you know, some of the ideas that we'd heard about or were generated within the committee itself, so that those kinds of things could be fully discussed and explored. Maybe some of them are good ideas, some are bad. Let's hear about it. Let's think about what we want to put out for discussion, going on through the process
Correct.
and getting more public feedback.
Now, I don't mean to cut you off too quick, but I want to give some time to these folks
Okay.
before we have the regular council meeting. So unless anybody else has any other questions, we can turn this over to public comment.
Just one last thing, you know, while you're talking, you know, also too, maybe defining what is out of bounds to talk about. For instance, you know, if somebody comes forward with a plan and says, yeah, we wanna, you know, move the Paul Bunyan Trail. That's not what this is about. We want to, you know, right, yeah, you know, take out Main Street, turn it into grass. That's not what it's about, you know? And so also too, I think it'd be important for you all if we identified this is out of bounds. So if a question does come from the public that we've already said, no, we're not, you know, we're not gonna move the chamber building. We're not gonna move, you know, whatever. We're not gonna get rid of the Pioneer Village, stuff like that. You know, I think maybe that would be helpful too, to kind of keep it focused. So as you do get the feedback, then you can help weed it out, if that makes sense.
But who's gonna provide that direction as to what is out of bounds? Is that gonna be city staff or?
I think right now it should start with this group right here, the council, go to city staff, and then go out from there to the chamber and the business owners to say, hey, this is what's out of bounds. And once that process would be taken, then it is turned over to you. But it starts here, you know, because I think what we've all been talking about, we kind of defined it now. If it doesn't have something to do with infrastructure, utilities,
ADA.
you know, it's out of bounds. If somebody wants to put in a fancy art sculpture and take out half of the town, that's out of bounds right now. That's not what we're doing. So I would say that would be a job for us to put together for you. Otherwise, you guys don't know,
Right.
you know, so.
Let's just take this one step at a time type thing. I think we'll all be more comfortable with it. We're not racing against the clock. We want to work with everybody. We want them to work with us. With that though, is there I'd like to turn it over to public comment, open forum. If there's anybody that would like to come up and make a comment or discuss anything that we discussed regarding this or pertaining to the downtown master plan, please do. Go ahead.
If you could, whoever would like to just come up to the podium so we can hear. Thank you.
Jeremiah Duvall. I guess the biggest thing, I know we've talked about property lines in the past, at the city council. Property lines are obviously all over the place, like Joe mentioned. I think before we do projects that are public projects, we should probably make sure that the public actually owns that piece of property. I know you said roads don't move, which I get, but the utility easements do happen. That would like property owners knowing, they'll come in, they'll come talk to the city about getting a easement with the utility. And then the property owner comes back and all of a sudden there's a utility right down his property. It's technically his property, but they thought it was the road right away, which isn't really true because we own all the way on the road. We pay taxes on that. So then all of a sudden now we're dealing with a utility that got pushed through without the consent of the property owner. So that's, I guess, where I think there is some deal with that, which is on the topic of what we're talking about here with sidewalks, stormwater, all that stuff would technically be on a private person's property, but we're making decisions as a city. So I don't know if there's a way to kind of put that cart, I think, first.
Absolutely.
So the city actually owns the property that they're talking about instead of it being private owners. And I don't know, like you say, we've been paying taxes on all those pieces of property for a long time under a public road that we have no rights to. So I don't know if there's a way, when you guys come up with that plan, of figuring out some sort of tax credit or forego some taxes for taking that property. Just a thought.
Thank you.
So we were talking about property lines and stuff. I'm city planner Steve Timblin here. As we were talking about surveys and work that would be involved in that, a lot of times that'll come down to possibly title work as well. Figuring out, once we have a survey, we're gonna probably discover more and more of these things where someone might own beyond something. That can bring a lot of things to light, so it would be costly, I'm imagining, to resurvey the entire downtown. If we were to do a replot, which was mentioned by Councilmember Hall, that I imagine would be pretty expensive over the long haul. Figuring out which piece of infrastructure can go underneath public land. Another stakeholder that I imagine would be very important as property owners as well. So business owners own some of their property downtown, some of them rent it. I imagine that would be a stakeholder to bring forward too. So I'll say that.
Did you want to say something?
Somebody was addressing property lines. Now, we own one that's out into the street. Although that doesn't bother me. But we also have part of our walkway on the city land. Of course, this all happened without anybody knowing. We got approval through the city. And I'm wondering, okay, how do we go about dealing with these? The access to the property is actually on city land, one of the doorways. And I'm wondering, how do we go about correcting these things in a way that works for everybody? Because I'd hate to lose access to the building. Yet I have no need for that property that's out in the street. So those are some kind of things I think you're gonna run into and find. And it's our concern as owners that we do it in a way that continues to make the business operational and produce revenue, so. As far as this whole updating, I was a member of the road committee many years ago that actually changed the road as it went through Nisswa. And as part of that, there were incredible drawings done of how this town should look. I think they added a bunch of parking spaces, a whole bunch of parking spaces in Nisswa by the change. I don't know what happened to that, but it showed it was kind of a beautiful setup without really changing a lot of the structure and sidewalks. I do agree. The stormwater is a big issue down by Big Axe. That water just comes ripping, forms a big, huge
Pond.
yeah, that everybody drives through. So I guess I agree with that infrastructure change and moving forward on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have about 6 minutes till 7, so if there's anybody else, we will invite up here, and then we will need to adjourn to get prepared for the regular council meeting.
Thank you. I'm Susan Matheson Young, and I'm representing the Nisswa Area Historical Society. There was a little meeting with us. I believe it was October 1st. When we went into that meeting, we were pretty concerned that people were looking at our land and licking their lips. We are very happy to hear that that isn't something that is on the table and that that's off the table. So I really appreciate hearing that from you. We are our own entity. We don't belong to the city or county. We own all that land. We're a little concerned. We understand that we rent where our caboose is at. And in 2028, I believe it is, that land is up. Right now, the city's renting that to us for our caboose and our little train. I think it's like $1 or whatever. Anyway, it's a very small amount. We're hoping that that continues to be something that we can provide to the families that come up. When they come into the history center, the main thing they look at are those walls, and they want to see those downtown businesses. They want to have the same experience for their family. Nisswa is for feelings. It's an in thing. They feel this. They come up, they want that same experience. They want to share it with their family, that they were able to go to the candy store. They were able to go to, Zeisers. They remember the totem pole. So changing that downtown, how it even looks, would be a concern. And I think it should be a concern for business owners. So it should, I understand the infrastructure. We all want a sidewalk. We want a sidewalk too past our area. So again, it's just nice to hear that you guys are slowing down and taking your time. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, if there's nothing else from the general public and nothing else from the council members, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Can I?
Council motion?
Whoops.
I would like a motion, please, as far as I think the direction the council has established for tonight would be to request the chamber to provide some input on community members. They will present that in December, and then we will follow with the next step, maybe trying to further define scope and specifics that have been discussed tonight. Just want to make sure we're on the same page,
Yes,
if that's fair.
I think that there's gonna be some more workshops. To some extent, however we determine them, to be able to make sure that we're tackling this thing the right way. Define the scope as much as possible to WSN from the feedback that we're getting and determining across the board.
Yeah, so I'd make a motion that we put the whole project on hold until after the first of the year, when we can get a workshop set up with the council to define, what may be out of balance, what the scope are, and put that together, so then it can go out to the chamber and to the public and get that kind of validated from all of you before we move ahead. So
I'll second that.
All right, a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Nay. Passed. Additional for,
Thank you,
Chamber
that's what I
direction?
needed. Sure,
Or is
if that's included in the motion, if you're both in agreement.
sure, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay. All right, well, without further ado, I'll take a motion for an adjourn.
Also move.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So closed. See you in 3 minutes.
Back is really bothering me. Yeah, I got some Tylenol. Do you need some? Huh? Oh,